Today we're going to do a clarity reading. So what I mean by that is whatever situation you're dealing with that you're looking for some clarity around, that's the topic at hand, so to speak. And the way we're going to get some clarity around that today is I'm going to pull two cards. Ooh, they want to fly. Oh, there they are. Look at that. So I was going to say I'm going to pull two cards. I have pulled two cards. The first card represents the role that you think you're supposed to play in the situation, and the second card represents the role you are actually meant to play. So I think a lot of times we get into difficult situations in our life, or we have a hard time accessing clarity, maybe we'll put it that way, when we make assumptions about the roles we're supposed to play and we're unwilling to look at those assumptions. So this reading is intended to help you with that. Again, doesn't matter what area of your life you're in, any situation, it could be with your body, it could be with your money, it could be with your work, it could be in a relationship. Any situation where you're looking for clarity is where this is going to apply. So again, this first card represents the role you think you're supposed to play, but is actually not the role that would be best for you to play. And the second card represents essentially like advice from spirit, like here's this would be a better role for you to play. It's more in alignment with the role you're meant to play, and this will lead towards healing, towards resolution, towards better in whatever situation you're looking to move in that direction. So let's look at the cards. We've got 10 of Cups in reverse for the first card, and 6 of Swords in reverse for the second card. Okay, let's look at the bottom of the deck. Bottom of the deck represents like underarching influence. I say that all the time. Overarching influence, or you could say underlying influence. So essentially, kind of, I always think of it as kind of like the why card. Like, why are you being asked to switch these roles or let go of these assumptions and play this role? So we got Justice, Major Arcana at the bottom of the deck. So powerful reason why. And I'm like, look at how this is so similar to this stone. Even the stone setup, do you know what I mean? Like almost like it's being elevated. Sometimes it just always floors me, some of the synchronicities that happen. It's like we've got like at either end of this reading, the same energy happening. That's what it feels like to me, at least. Okay, so in terms of the imagery, what's really standing out to me is these circles. Like, look at that. That's interesting, right? So there's 2 circles on either end here on the 10 of Cups in reverse, the first card. There's one green circle right in the middle. And then there's a circle at the base of what feels like it has the same energy as this crystal, this stone. I don't know exactly what that means, and maybe there's just a particular message for you, but it's just popping. I think it's also interesting that I chose to do this stone, this sphere stone, and then these circles are coming out and they're just popping. So we'll see if anything in particular comes up with that. Otherwise, I just wanted to be sure to mention it. Now, this is interesting because I'm just getting the gut hit to actually read a particular interpretation. And one reason I said it's interesting is I recorded one reading just prior to this, and I got the gut hit to do the same, to read a particular tarot reader's interpretation of the card. And I haven't had that gut hit yet in this whole time I've had this channel. I mean, this channel is pretty new, but so I think my point in saying all that is I think there is something today in the energy that this particular reader's interpretation wants to come through. So let's read about these cards. I'm going to pull it up on my phone. If you would like to read along or ever would like this particular reader's interpretations, you can find her interpretations of each tarot card at crystal-reflections.com. Okay, so that's what I'm reading from. So we're going to do the 10 of Cups in reverse first and see what is said here. Oh, I think I need to refresh it. One moment. So once again, 10 of Cups in reverse, the first card for you represents what you've been assuming is your role in this situation, but what is actually not your role. And then we'll go to the second card, the Six of Swords in reverse, which is the role that Spirit is asking you to embody more. So there's kind of, if this resonates, there's like a willingness to let go of embodying the Ten of Cups in reverse and a willingness to step into embodying the Six of Swords in reverse. Okay, here we go. Ten of Cups reversed says a highly charged situation has gone wrong and you are experiencing burnout because you have chosen to turn your emotions inward against yourself rather than expressing them. The denial of your inner self is producing feelings of anger and deceit, which are blinding you to the happiness life can offer you. The rainbow represents a promise. The actuality has to be worked for. So in the standard Ten of Cups, there's a rainbow. So this is a more abstract interpretation of it, but that's what she's referring to when she says the rainbow. You need to clearly envision your dreams of social harmony, global coexistence, and your personal hopes for a happy family if you wish them to be realized. When the situation surrounding you is causing depression or sadness, do not worry. Time will heal your aching heart. Soon the sadness will depart. When you have experienced the terrible feelings of being let down, it suggests that your feelings have been hurt by the thoughtless actions of others, actions which have caused tears. Try not to analyze so much. Be more spontaneous. Allow your inner emotional contentment to radiate out all aspects of your life, and you will know satisfaction. There can be a serious problem with your emotional quote-unquote families. They may be strong, but they may not be correct or productive. A family or group may be smothering, or in other words, taking advantage of you. The emotions of the group may be healthy within the group, but may be too self-serving in the bigger picture. So that's interesting, right? Let's just take a breath on that because it's not necessarily easy to hear. But hopefully, considering this is a clarity reading, like sometimes things that are easy to hear also there can be relief in hearing them when we get more clarity on what's going wrong. So I feel like reading her interpretation of Ten of Cups in reverse, there definitely seems to be it has something to do with, like she said, quote unquote family. So it doesn't have to mean your actual family of origin or family that you've created, but it means something with group dynamics is off. Now, I think in terms of the question we asked is what role have you assumed you have to play that is actually not your role to play? I think what came through strongly in that interpretation, in her interpretation of the Ten of Cups in reverse, is that you're turning a lot inward. And I think we're going to have to see her interpretation of the Six of Swords in reverse, but I think there's something here about it's not your role to take it all on, to take on not even all the tasks, but essentially the emotional labor. It's not your role to take on all the burden, the guilt. So there's something here. I believe it's going to be interesting to see what she says about the Six of Swords in reverse, but like of looking outward and seeing the dynamics around you. Do you know what I mean? So you've been kind of turning it all inward and maybe self-analyzing. But I think in whatever situation you're dealing with, there seems to be some sort of group dynamic that is off. And if you keep self-analyzing, I think that might be where the problem lies. So let's look at what she says about the Six of Swords in reverse. And again, if you're intrigued by this reader, her interpretations of the cards, I have found her work to be really helpful. You can go to crystal-reflections.com and you can find, she has all her interpretations up for free, which is amazing. So let's see. And if I remember, I will be sure to link that out in the description box too. Okay, Six of Swords in reverse. Here's what she says about that. Six of Swords in reverse says you're experiencing information overload. Clear your mind and put your thoughts in order. In a situation, there has been mental or physical abuse, and you need distance and support so that you can gain a new perspective. Wow. So that's not easy to hear, right? And it certainly does play off of what we just talked about with the Ten of Cups in reverse, doesn't it? that it seems like you thought your role in whatever group dynamic you're dealing with was to kind of like take it all on, do all the heavy lifting emotionally and otherwise, maybe assume it's always your fault. And it seems like what your actual role is, what you're being asked to consider from spirit, is actually distance from this group so you can process the dynamics. Okay, so let's continue reading here. With distance, it is possible to rise above the situation so you can see the larger pattern, determine some meaning behind it, and what actions are necessary. There are times when it is proper to leave others behind in order to break through relationship patterns that obsess and bind you. When you feel locked into a difficult set of circumstances, nothing can be accomplished. Center yourself and wait. Difficult though your life may be, it will change. Think carefully now and ask yourself if you have considered everything. Communicate any new ideas or decisions in such an objective way that they can be received and heard. Focus your mind and allow yourself to see the whole picture. When your balance and peace are disturbed, your passage is no longer serene. Your emotions are stirred up and your physical or spiritual journey becomes stormy. Trying to quote-unquote attack a long-standing problem, especially one that has been accepted by others, only agitates the situation. Unsatisfying or oppressive situations can go quietly along for years until someone decides to do something about it. Trying to remove the swords from the boat will sink it. They are plugging the holes. When swords symbolize unhappy memories, where silence has become the defense, communication will be painful, but it will begin the healing process. Here are questions she encourages you to ask yourself. Number 1, what immediate problems are you attempting to solve? Number 2, where will you go to solve them? Number 3, where in your life right now is mental clarity important? Number 4, how are you liberating your mind from clutter and false ideas so that you can think clearly? And number 5, when you step back from your problem to gain a clear perspective, what do you see? And then she said any special messages when the 6 of Swords is next to a 10, which it's next to the 10 of Cups. It can be symbolize an important decision regarding a move, a possible trip, or a new residence. Okay, let's just take a breath together. Because there's certainly a sort of heaviness to this, because it's difficult when we have to look at dynamics clearly. And especially, I mean, oppressive dynamics is what she said. And I think I'm finding it so interesting how these cards are so different. You know, it's a Swords, it's a 6, and then it's the Cups, it's a 10. But how they really are in terms of this reading, like complementary in terms of clarity, right? So 10 of Cups, you thought your role was to kind of take on all the burdens, again, emotionally and otherwise. And what Spirit would like you to consider is maybe your role is, again, some distance so you can see dynamics clearly. And that is not at all easy, but it also is important, right? It's not at all easy, but it also is, I was going to say exciting. I don't feel like I want to say that because I don't want to undermine what you're having to navigate right now, the discomfort. And I also think sometimes our discomfort isn't so much about like when we have to face difficult things and look clearly. Sometimes it's also about the like when we don't know what's going on. So sometimes like, you know, 10 of Cups in reverse, staying in your assumed role when it's not the role that Spirit is wanting you to play is very, very exhausting, right? So I also am like, there's a lot of, I guess there is excitement in my being coming up right now for you. So acknowledging the discomfort and acknowledging the excitement, that I feel a lot of power in this reading. A lot of opportunity, especially if this resonates, you're willing to take it in, to have massive shifts over time eventually. because of your willingness to make this shift. And again, if I had to put simple words to it, I think it's, something, it doesn't, regardless of the situation, there's something going on with some sort of group dynamic, and the dynamics themselves are toxic. But you've been making the assumption that you're the one who has to change, or something's wrong with you. So you've been taking on the heaviness of the actual group dynamics. Does that make sense? And then what the role spirit would actually like you to play is taking some distance from that group dynamic to be able to see it clearly, so you understand, not only so you can liberate yourself from the burden, the emotional burden of always thinking it's you that's wrong, but also so that you can understand what decisions you want to make more clearly. Because when we're in the midst of group dynamics but we're unconscious about what's actually going on, it's very hard to make solid decisions, right? But when we can get some space, then we can move towards understanding what, just better decision making, frankly. And I'm, Six of Swords in reverse, or excuse me, upright, is a really beautiful card of victory. It's a card of like moving away to calmer shores. And swords themselves, especially when they're like used in the positive sense, so to speak, can represent just like really beautiful, clear cut energy. Do you know what I mean? And so I think like it's interesting that the first card is a cups card and the second card is a swords card, because it seems like something else I'm getting like with 10 of cups in reverse is almost like you thought you needed to have endless compassion in this situation. But what's actually being called for is more sword energy. So boundaries, clear strategic thinking. And as I say that, I'm being called to speak out that, I used to think that being strategic in a relationship was almost manipulative, because similar to you, I've had, this has been things that have played out a lot in my life. I'm a Pisces, so I have essentially oceans of compassion. And maybe that's one way to put this 10 of cups in reverse. Like you thought your role was to have oceans and oceans and oceans of compassion. There's beauty to that. Don't get me wrong. And I've had to learn that I need to use that oceans of compassion towards people that are not going to take advantage of it and who are going to use it in a way to get better, right? So in other words, I've had to learn what boundaries are, what healthy boundaries are for me, and how to implement them. And I think that's going to be a lifelong journey for me. So it's not like I've learned it and now, forevermore things are great in all my relationships and so on and so forth. But what I will say is it's been very empowering to begin to learn how to be skillful and strategic in relationships, and not to see that as manipulative, but to see that like to actually have quality relationships, we need to see clearly. And we need to build relationship skills. And we need to sometimes manage and be strategic with people who are difficult in our lives. And all of that can be used in a really, really, really beautiful way. And so I think there's like a shift there's something like that going on. You clearly are a very compassionate, kind soul. But it's almost like that compassion and kindness is going to some hungry ghosts around you, and it's not being used well. And not only is it like not being used, sometimes when you feed compassion to somebody, it really uplifts them and allows them to heal, right? So not only is that not happening in whatever situation we're discussing here, and I also think that it's actually being used against you in some way. Does that make sense? So there's some clear looking that needs to be seen. That was a weird way to say it. Hopefully you understand what I mean. There's, again, distance so you can see clearly, and you're looking for the dynamics at play. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's something to be said here too. I think it was interesting, it has been interesting on my journey to realize that a lot of what's going on in my life, and specifically in relationships, is not as personal as I think, but really there's dynamics at play. And anybody who has done some healing in that regard, who has some wisdom in that regard, could take pretty much anybody and you could like see the dynamics at play. So everything, I say that because everything we think is so personal isn't as personal as we think. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully that provides some relief for you too, that it's just not as personal as you think. It's not, and as confused as you may be right now, you can sort this out. You know what I mean? You're going to be able to work through the emotional complexities and begin to see things more clearly if you're willing to do that. And it seems important that you at least consider it for your own just emotional and physical well-being. So there's two things coming to me. I certainly want to talk about the bottom of the deck, but I also want to look up the symbolism of this crystal because I feel like that's important. So I think let's do that first, and then we'll discuss the bottom of the deck. Okay, so this is shungite, and here's what it says about shungite. Shungite helps purify deeply buried emotions by helping bring them to the surface, consciousness, for healing. It helps shield you from negative energies and creating an aura of protection around your auric field. It can also be used in physical healing for EMF blocking and even water elixirs for purification of the water from bacteria and viruses. So that's interesting, isn't it? So it's like this deeply healing stone designed to bring up those buried emotions for the purpose of healing and for the purpose of protection. And isn't that interesting? Because now what I'm seeing with the Ten of Cups after reading that is, or excuse me, Ten of Cups in reverse. See how like this, or the way I see it is clearly like this is the bottom of the cup. So when it's reversed, it's like all pouring down, meaning I think in this reading that seems to represent like repressed emotions, which makes a lot of sense because when we're in difficult group dynamics and we've become convinced that our role is to have oceans of compassion for others, we have to repress emotions. There's like a cognitive dissonance in that, right? There's like an incoherence, like, oh, these people who aren't actually kind deserve my kindness, right? Deserve my time and attention. And so to make that work, to kind of relieve the cognitive dissonance, what we have to start doing is repressing emotions, how we feel, how we actually feel, right? So it's a coping mechanism and it makes sense. But what this stone helps with, and you know, as woo-woo as it sounds, like I really feel like the energy of the stone wants to be present with you in this reading. So even though you're not physically with this stone, I feel like there's power with it being in this reading. And what it seems to want to help you with is like a gentle pulling up of those emotions to consciousness so that you don't have to hold this heavy burden, so that you can process how to actually protect yourself. And again, we go from cups to swords, right? So oceans of compassion are beautiful. And so that would be represented by cups. But swords are also important. How do we protect ourselves? And not in a violent way in any regard, but just in a powerful way. You know, and as I say that, I'm thinking of something I listened to once. I'm pretty sure it was the book, what is it? The Seth Speaks. It's like one of the first channeled writings in Western history. I believe it was that book. And in that book, what was talked about by the quote unquote entity that was being channeled is that as humans, we misunderstand aggression. So what was said is like in the animal kingdom, in the world of nature, animals are aggressive so that they can avoid being violent. And then, but what humans do is we are like a passive aggressive, but we like stuff it down. So we're nice and then we become violent. Do you know what I mean? And not all of us choose to like take out that repressed stuff in a violent way, but hopefully you understand what I mean. Like collectively, that's a problem, right? So I'm almost seeing that here in terms of like, there's, you know, this idea, or I'll speak from my own experience. I didn't realize the power in learning how to protect myself. And I don't just mean like from physical harm, but I just mean like my energy, my essence, all of that. And so there's power in that. And not only is there power, there's actually deep, deep kindness, because when we learn true protection skills, then we're willing to be aggressive so we don't have to be violent. Put another way, we're willing to put up boundaries so that we don't have to resent people. We're willing to leave situations that aren't right for us so that we can liberate others, and ourselves. And so there's definitely that energy coming in here strongly. A shift from thinking that you have to keep pouring into this situation, these people, that if you just had more compassion, it would change, to how do I protect myself? How do I heal myself? How do I get what I need? I think it's a really powerful shift for you. And as I say that, another powerful shift for me on my healing journey has been realizing that, number one, we have to understand power dynamics at play for any healing to happen. So, for example, like, in order for adults to understand how to treat children properly, we have to understand there's a power dynamic there. Children are relying on adults 100% to get their needs met. And so if we don't understand that power dynamic is at play and is affecting the relationship as a whole, it's very difficult to be clear about how to be in positive relationships with children, how to be supportive, how to heal relationships with children, so on and so forth. So those power dynamics can happen in many different regards. They can happen in terms of like gender roles in relationships. They can happen when it comes to different classes. They can happen when it comes to different races, so on and so forth. So the second thing I was going to say is, because of that, understanding, because power dynamics need to be understood to understand healing, what also needs to be recognized is that healing for one person might look very different than for another. So for example, if somebody in a power dynamic has been more subservient, that healing is going to look different than the person who has been more oppressive. Do you get what I'm saying? So if I'm in more of the oppressive role, then my healing is going to come from really listening to somebody that I was unconsciously maybe not listening to, and really allowing them to stand in their power and supporting them and so on and so forth. But if I'm in the subservient role, then my power might come from like standing up for myself. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think there's power in seeing healing and seeing just like living well and beautifully, personally and collectively, in a bit more understanding there's a bit more complexity to it. It's not just like, oh, hey, let's just be nice to everybody. Do you know what I mean? There's more complexity than that. Oh, let's just be easygoing. Let's be, chummy. There is so much more complexity to living well, especially living well in community, whether that community be like you and another person or it's bigger than that. Like, we really have to learn these relational skills. We have to be strategic with our energy. We have to be willing to see things clearly and to process past stuff and to not always turn everything inward. And so as we are speaking more, I'm just getting a lot of power coming through. I feel like you're more powerful than you realize, and I think in this reading you're really being asked to tap into that power more. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the bottom of the deck. So the bottom of the deck, as I mentioned before, represents underlying influence. It essentially represents kind of the energy that's present throughout this entire journey for you. It represents kind of the why of what you're being asked to do. And I am getting called in this particular reading to read the Modern Witches guidebook for that interpretation of justice. So I'm going to do that right now. It says, the choices we make shape who we are. Justice, contemplative in her bright red robe-like coat, holds high the sword of choice. She does not treat her task lightly, and the balanced scales indicate that she is weighing all the options before her. Wow. So, I mean, that's basically another interpretation of the Six of Swords in reverse. There's like this willingness to hold your sword of choice and to be really conscious about it. And I love that it says like she doesn't take anything lightly and she is weighing her options. So again, that's like looking at getting some distance, looking at the dynamics. But then that's also like what I just said, like looking at life through the lens that life, there's a complexity to life. There's a complexity to relationships. It's rarely black or white. It's very rarely simple. Um, and as I say that, I do think we can get to simplicity, but we have to be willing to work through the complexity to get there. We cannot just start with simplicity, because then it's just fake simplicity with all this stuff repressed underneath. Do you know what I'm saying? And so justice seems to be just holding that energy of choice and complexity in this really beautiful way. There's so much strength in this justice card. Justice seeks to uncover deep understanding of moral and ethical truths. Wow. And once she's found the right path, she's ready to take action and use that sword. Oh, isn't that beautiful? So it's like you're being asked on this journey. So the why of it is you're going to uncover truth, which is like when we uncover more and more truth, there's so much more joy and true simplicity to our life, right? And so I think it's like this really beautiful why behind why you're being asked to make this shift in terms of how you perceive your role in this situation. Okay, one more paragraph here. You have to take responsibility for every choice you make. If you drift through life without examining your choices and what they say about you and your values, you'll never be truly self-aware, and you may find yourself treating others with dishonesty and unfairness. There may be a difficult issue that you need to examine or a social responsibility you've been neglecting. It's time to stand up, and it's time to do the right thing. Wow, that's really powerful. Really beautifully summarizes all that. It's almost like this, you know how I said like I felt like the stone and the justice card have the same essence in this reading? It's like there's a pulling to the surface, but then there's also this like alchemizing that's happened. So then you can stand in your beautiful power. Now I just am feeling, oh yes, look at that. Just felt called to look at the card underneath it at the bottom of the deck. And it's 10 of Wands in reverse, which is so beautiful because 10 of Wands can represent heavy burden, okay? Like just heavy burden. And so in reverse, what it's speaking to me about in this particular reading is like a liberating of that burden through standing in your power. Wow. So such a beautiful reading, truly. Thank you for allowing me to read for you and tuning in. I'm assuming that this is not, you're in the midst of some difficulty. And so I just like want to hold a little space and acknowledge that and acknowledge also that you're not alone in it. So like I said before, it's not as personal as you think. And not only in terms of like, people can help you, or resources, so on and so forth, can help you decipher the energy so you can stand more in truth, you can understand the truth, but also in terms of like, you're not alone. As alone as you may feel in navigating this, you really are not. I mean, I look at this and I can resonate with it strongly. So this has certainly been an aspect of my healing journey, is going from the 10 of Cups in reverse to the 6 of Swords in reverse, and embodying more and more the justice for the purpose of liberating myself from heavy burdens. So just me alone, I can resonate with it. And I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of other people being asked to do a similar journey right now. So it's not easy, but it also feels important. And it feels like you are way more powerful than you think. So I think if all of this is resonating, be mindful of not fixating too much in, but instead broaden out. And I specifically mean in terms of time. So instead of thinking of like, oh, if I make this change, where am I going to be even a year from now? Think more of like what it could do for you 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what it could do for the people, like the future generation. So even if you don't have children, like the people you impact on your journey and what that does for the future generation. Expand out a bit, because that is going to help you navigate this with a bit more grace and ease on yourself, but also give you permission to do it. Because a lot of times when we're making this shift in the short term, it can be very difficult, but long term, so worth it. I think that is actually like a Tony Robbins quote. I don't think he meant it in terms of emotional labor probably, but something along the lines like we vastly underestimate what we can do in a year, or excuse me, vastly overestimate what we can do in a year, and we vastly underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And so I think keeping that in mind as you go, as you navigate this journey, as you take this journey step by step, as you shift your role, is going to be important, because the Justice card is major arcana. This is major. Do you know what I mean? And so it's major arcana. One way to look at it is like it's taking a broader view, specifically in terms of time. So it's major arcana it's going to consider a lot of aspects of your life, looking at a more holistic view, but it also is going to look at the longer view, and again, look at the impact of this on future generations. And so I think whenever you can, if you get fixated that short term, this is difficult, this is hard, I don't know what to do, see if you can take a breath and step back a little bit, practice embodying justice, and that's going to help you not only tune into the guidance you need to navigate this well, but just like also give you the comfort that you deserve as you are navigating this.